Kia ora koutou katoa, it's Mrs. Goodson here. This is lesson 9 for level 1 science on genetic variation, and it's all about gametes because we know that sexual reproduction leads to genetic variation. So we're just going to describe gametes in plants and animals and how and where they're produced, and explain the role of gametes and how fertilization leads to a zygote. So we've got some key definitions that you need to know. Gametes are sex cells, sperm or egg cells in animals, pollen and ovals in flowering plants, and they are produced in the male or the female reproductive organs by the process of meiosis, which is cell division to produce gametes. And then we've got fertilization, which is the fusion or the joining of a male and female gamete to form a zygote, which is the first fertilized cell. And that fertilized cell copies itself many times via the process of mitosis to get an embryo, which grows into a baby and then into an adult. Fertilization is a random independent event that leads to genetic variation. So it is just one sperm and one egg. So zygote just means a fertilized egg, a single cell containing chromosomes from the male and female gametes at the time point of fertilization. So a zygote has a full set of chromosomes. Variation just means differences. So differences between individuals in a population. A population is members of a species that live in a particular area. Genetic variation are differences that are inheritable, and that means that they can be passed on from parents to their offspring. So some keywords: gametes, fertilization, zygote, variation, and specifically genetic variation. So gametes are an organism's reproductive cells. They are also referred to as sex cells because to have sexual reproduction, you need to have gametes. Female gametes are called ova or egg cells. In flowering plants are ovals. Male gametes are called sperm in animals, and the pollen in flowering plants is the male gamete. So gametes are haploid cells. That means they've only got half the genetic material. It's because they're going to join up together at fertilization. So they only, to maintain the same number of chromosomes, the gametes have to have half the genetic material. And each cell carries only one copy of each chromosome. These reproductive cells are produced through a type of cell division called meiosis. Okay. So just a review really of flowering plants. So we've got the male gamete is pollen, the female gamete is oval. Pollination, we hear quite about pollination. We've got birds, we've got bees, we've got the wind can pollinate as well. And so pollination is about the transfer of pollen from one flower to another flower. And it's incredibly important. And without pollination, we wouldn't get seeds, we wouldn't get new plants. So pollination is incredibly important. So if human activity has disrupted the life cycle, has disrupted, the plants, the animals, can interfere with these systems that have built up over time. So flowers are the tools that plants use to make their seeds. Okay, so we've got the ovaries in the bottom of the flower with the female gametes, and on the pollen grains is the male part on the anther, and so the pollen comes down here and fertilizes the egg cells and then forms a zygote here, and that grows into an embryo. It's a baby plant in a seed, and then the seed can grow into a seedling and then into an adult plant. So gametes in animals obviously different. So we've got the egg cells in the female gamete, and the sperm is the male gamete. And in animals, ova mature in the ovaries of females, and sperm develop in the testes of males. So just a review, we've got other videos on meiosis as well. Gametes are formed through the cell division process called meiosis. So a body cell undergoes 2 divisions and produces 4 gametes, and each gamete is genetically different to each other and genetically different to the parent cell. And then during fertilization, the male and the female gametes join and produce a diploid cell. That means it's got a full set of paired chromosomes, and which is called a zygote, and that grows into an embryo and further growth later to either a seedling or a baby, and then into an adult organism. So gametes are required for sexual reproduction. The offspring produced in sexual reproduction is genetically different to each other and different to their parents. And this results in variation within a population because it involves the mixing of genetic information. So the offspring have different DNA to each other and different DNA to their parents. So fertilization leads to genetic variation. Gametes have half the total number of chromosomes that the organism needs. So we call that haploid, and humans need 46 chromosomes. Therefore, a human gamete has half that, 23 chromosomes. Fertilization is the fusion of the nucleus of a male gamete with the nucleus of a female gamete. When the 2 gametes combine, they merge the 2 sets of chromosomes to create a cell with the total number of chromosomes needed, and then so that's called a diploid cell. In humans, when the haploid sperm and egg cells join in fertilization, the resulting zygote has a total of 46 chromosomes, the correct number to develop. By having gametes which are haploid, when the gametes combine, diploid cells are maintained. So the joining of chromosomes in fertilization is a source of genetic variation, because fertilization is a random independent event. Okay, so the number of cells increases by meiosis. So once you've got the zygote, you've got a single cell, and then it divides and divides many times, develops into an embryo, and the cells begin to differentiate and specialize in animals and plants. So this is just a diagram explaining this. So we've got the egg has 23 chromosomes, the sperm has 23 chromosomes. They join together at fertilization, and then you've got 46 chromosomes and 23 pairs, and that grows into an embryo. So this video has been about describing the gametes in plants and animals, how and when gametes are produced, and the role of gametes and how fertilization leads to a zygote.